This is CBC Vancouver News.
This place felt like a torture chamber. I will not miss the character assassination.
Melanie Mark is leaving the BC Legislature.
Women get it worse from the opposition.
And she's calling the institution out.
Especially when it gets -5 or colder. It is literally deadly cold out there, and there aren't enough resources.
The push to get more people indoors as snow and cold blanket BC from the south coast to the north.
Very rewarding at times.
And a 70-year-old tradition. A martial arts club in Richmond marks a major milestone. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. The first First Nations woman to serve as a BC MLA and cabinet minister is leaving the legislature, but not before Melanie Mark issued a blistering, tearful rebuke of the institution and some of the people in it. She calls the legislature a torture chamber. Mira Baines has more on Mark's experience.
True to her spirit, Melanie Mark wore her grandfather's beaded moose-skin coat and didn't hold back after her goodbye speech to the BC Legislature.
I did not have an easy life. I did not really actually have a childhood. Like a lot of trauma in my life, and that made me a good advocate. But right now I'm advocating for my daughters.
Mark grew up in poverty. She says her mother had substance abuse issues and ended up homeless in the downtown east side. She also spent time in foster care. Today, surrounded by family, including her mother and 2 teenage daughters, she made her priorities clear.
My kids get one chance at a childhood, and Michaela and our family are going through some medical challenges right now. Learning that I had ADHD means a lot of people misunderstand me.
Mark was first elected in 2016, serving as Minister of Advanced Education Skills and Training and then Tourism Minister. Last September, she resigned her post as Tourism Minister, citing medical reasons. When the planned $1 billion Royal BC Museum redevelopment was announced, then cancelled, Mark bore the brunt of the criticism.
Women get it worse from the opposition. Women in question period get it worse than men. That's the bottom line.
Today, the 47-year-old held an eagle feather as she spoke to the legislature and called out colonialism and its influence.
This place felt like a torture chamber. I will not miss the character assassination.
She thanked former Premier John Horgan for his support, as well as current Premier David Eby.
The stress and the strain of the demands on Mel have been profound, and it is a reminder to all of us that we need to keep doing better because her voice is needed here.
Mark was the first one in her family to get a post-secondary education. One of her proudest accomplishments was waiving tuition fees for former youth in care during her time as Minister of Advanced Education. She plans on officially resigning by the end of March.
As they say never, but for now my canoe is heading in another direction.
She says she'll continue to raise her voice for the vulnerable, for children and missing and murdered women. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
Mark's departure has understandably garnered plenty of reaction today. A former Vancouver City Councilor says she left politics for similar reasons. Andrea Reimer has Cree and Métis ancestry.
For Indigenous women, they also have to deal with an extra layer, and it's not a thin layer, it's a very large layer that's been built for over 100 years of anti-Indigenous racism, and it extends through residential schools and right through to the missing and murdered Indigenous women today. So a society that allows Indigenous women and girls to be murdered is a society that doesn't respect or value Indigenous women's voices, and that's going to play out in the cabinet table in the same way it does in other workplaces.
Reimer believes more women need to be involved in politics in order to create long-term change and ensure the legislature is a more welcoming place for everybody. Today was Pink Shirt Day, an annual event aimed at inspiring people to stand up against bullying. A special ceremony was held at the BC Legislature today. Students, politicians, and community advocates were there, including Carol Todd, the mother of Amanda Todd, who was the victim of online sextortion. She spoke about cyberbullying and tools to report incidents anonymously. Amanda Todd took her own life in 2012 after being tormented online for years.
When we talk about bullying, cyberbullying, we are talking about meanness and online cruelty, something which my daughter experienced. And if she were here, she would be talking about how it felt, what it looked like, and what probably should be done about it.
Pink Shirt Day started in 2007 after a young student in Nova Scotia was threatened for wearing a pink shirt to school. 2 fellow students noticed it and worked with school staff to fundraise and give out pink shirts to stand with the victim. The last Wednesday in February is now marked as a day for people to join together in support. To other news now. If you've been outside recently or just looked, BC is getting hit with another winter cold snap. It's brought frigid temperatures and deep snow to parts of our province. Avihu-Gwen-Senge has more on the push to get people without homes indoors.
Walter Wells will open the doors of the Oddfellows Lodge to about 20 people tonight, offering 2 hot meals and shelter to anyone who shows up.
Especially when it gets -5 or colder, it is literally deadly cold out there, and there aren't enough resources.
He says their warming center will be open a record-breaking 28 days this winter. Dozens of warming centers are opening across Metro Vancouver tonight.
We'll be open as long as, it's freezing, we'll be open and providing services, making sure people are okay.
Environment Canada has issued extreme cold weather alerts for BC's coast and the southeastern region of the province. Parts of Vancouver Island and northern BC have already seen snowfall. In Prince George, mail and school buses were cancelled after more than 40 centimeters of snow fell in 24 hours. The cold weather will last into this weekend, with temperatures 5 to 15 degrees colder than usual for this time of year. BC's Ministry of Transportation warned drivers to be ready for snowy and slushy conditions on Metro Vancouver roads. Environment Canada warns higher elevation passes could get dangerous.
Check those forecasts out. Check Drive BC if you're going to be on the road, and make sure that you know what conditions you're going to encounter and be prepared for them.
And the forecast will be disappointing for those hoping for an early start to spring. Meteorologists warn to expect colder than usual temperatures for the first couple weeks of March. Avihu-Gwen-Senge, CBC News, Vancouver.
A man has now been charged after an alleged hit-and-run crash in Kitsilano last year that left another young man dead. Vancouver police say a 24-year-old man was crossing West 4th and Arbutus with a friend last June when he was struck by a car. The BPD says the driver did not stop and the man died at the scene. Police say 26-year-old Alexander Romero Arata has now been charged with criminal negligence causing death, failing to stop at an accident scene, and public mischief. He's being held in jail until his next court appearance. Homeowners in Surrey say a massive proposed tax hike is simply too much. The 17.5% increase would be the biggest in the city's history. As we told you earlier this week, the mayor blames much of it on the lingering policing issues. Zara Premji has more.
It shouldn't be that much high.
If this proposed tax hike becomes a reality, Aisha Siddiqa says it could have devastating ramifications for her family.
We have 4 kids. I don't know how we can manage it. It's, I think, very high. I don't do any job. I'm a homemaker. My husband only doing job. So I think it's very hard for him.
Over the weekend, the city of Surrey quietly unveiled its proposed tax increase of 17.5%, leaving some homeowners worried. Business leaders are also warning about a potential ripple effect if passed.
For businesses, that means a decision about hiring staff, about investing in capital assets, maybe even staying in Surrey.
Huberman says increased tax hikes are already something many are facing in this city.
They have faced as high, in some cases, 150% of a tax increase each year in the past 3 years. That's unacceptable, that's unsustainable. And so the business community is just really exhausted right now.
And not all in the city are fully on board.
This is one option that we have. I think we need to explore other options. I can tell you my wife doesn't like it. It is very, very steep. And again, like I've said before, there are other options that we need to look at.
Councilor Bowe says it's a price that will likely have to be paid based on the condition the city was left in when the new mayor moved in.
But one thing I'm not willing to do is reduce services or delay the construction of infrastructure, adding to further budgets down the road.
But that's cold comfort for this mother who says her family may have to move again, and this time out of the Lower Mainland.
Definitely it's unfair.
The City of Surrey says now that a proposed budget is on the table, a public consultation will take place early next month with hopes of finalizing the budget by the end of next month. Zara Premji, CBC News, Surrey.
A Vancouver City Councilor, meanwhile, is calling on people to have their say after the city announced its biggest proposed property tax hike in recent years. As we told you last night, Council's looking at an almost 10% increase to property taxes if the newly revised draft budget is approved next month.
It is my strong hope that the ABC majority makes clear to the public early on what they're thinking about the budget, so that if they are looking at significant cuts, that the public have a chance to have a say in those early on, and we're not making major decisions on the floor of council.
Some councillors blame the hefty increase on labor costs and inflation. The public can weigh in at a council meeting next Tuesday. A vote will be held sometime in March. Uber and Lyft drivers protested in front of the Vancouver Art Gallery this afternoon, calling for better working conditions as well as pay.
We deserve
Drivers argue the rideshare companies are doing little to protect them, and there's no one who will listen to their concerns.
They charge 50% from every trip. Where's the transparency? If rider is paying $60, why are we getting like $30 from that amount? We need to know what rider is paying. That is our right.
Drivers claim the apps are taking more than their stated 25% fee and deactivating accounts with no explanation. Passengers at YVR may soon be able to board planes a little quicker. Air Canada is testing new facial recognition software. Passengers add their passport and a selfie to the Air Canada app. Then, when you go to board the plane at the gate, you walk through a facial recognition gate without the need to pull up your boarding pass or your ID. For those who don't want to, the pilot project is optional.
The digital identity is captured on their phone. They give us consent during day of travel. We use it for a period of an extract of it for a period of about 36 hours from the time we get it to the time that it's removed from all of our systems, and use it only for the purpose it's given, which is really to facilitate their travel on that day.
He's hopeful the project will lead to a smoother and faster passenger experience that cuts down on lineups. Right now, it's only available on select Air Canada flights from Vancouver to Winnipeg, and for eligible customers entering the Air Canada Cafe at Toronto's Pearson International Airport. Still with the skies, Singapore Airlines is pulling out of Canada, dropping its direct service from here in Vancouver. Right now, the airline offers weekly direct flights, but in its quarterly financial statement, it says services to YVR will be scrubbed as of October. It says it's adjusting capacity in response to demand, but it's a decision that took some industry experts by surprise, with travel to and Southeast Asia on the rise.
The last part of the world to really recover in terms of demand from the pandemic. It's a year at least behind the transatlantic market, for example, but over the last few months it's really picked up, and we're seeing flights are quite full, both the flights directly to Southeast Asia and connecting flights as well.
With the airline's departure, direct flights from YVR to Southeast Asia will become even more limited. Right now, Air Canada provides seasonal service to Bangkok between January and March, while Philippine Airlines offers flights to Manila every day. Federal Minister of Defense Anita Anand was in Vancouver today to talk shipbuilding, but instead she was bombarded by questions about the suspected Chinese weather balloon that was recently shot down over the Yukon. This comes after new reports of suspected monitoring buoys were detected in the Arctic by the Canadian military. Anand would not speculate whether the debris collected in the Yukon by the U.S. government was spy technology.
But rest assured, our priority from a defense standpoint is the protection of Canada and Canada's population. And as the shoot down of the suspected balloon over central Yukon exemplified, that will always be our first priority, and we will leave no stone unturned to ensure the protection of our country.
Now, that object shot down over the Yukon was only one of 3 in a short period of time. The other 2 were shot down over Lake Huron and off the coast of South Carolina. It's a joke we've heard for many years. Robots are eventually coming to take our jobs. But a Victoria Brewing company has embraced that recent advance in artificial intelligence, asking one piece of software to come up with its latest craft brew. Whistleboy Brewing recently unveiled its new Robo Beer. It was created using a recipe generated by artificial intelligence. The team asked ChatGPT to make the recipe as well as the beer's description, a move that caught some customers a bit off guard.
It was entirely created by artificial intelligence. What? Actually? I had no idea. That's amazing. But now I really want to try it.
I thought it was fantastic. Definitely didn't know it was created by like an AI, but it was a very lovely beer.
That said, the brewers stopped just short of giving ChatGPT all the credit. They say the original recipe contained 10 times the necessary hops, which their team thankfully caught. Chalk that up to computer error or bitterness.
And the club started in September 1953.
A long-running martial arts club in Richmond is celebrating a big milestone this year. We'll take you inside when we return. Hello to everyone on our commercial-free live stream tonight. Before we get to our next story, I have an apology. Last night, I introduced a story about a New Hawk totem pole finally returning home after more than a century. I referred to the wrong community. It was, in fact, returned to Bella Coola. I'm very sorry, and a big thank you to John for pointing out my mistake. Thanks for watching, John. It is Black History Month, and a panel of Black community members in Atlantic Canada selected 20 people to highlight for CBC Black Changemakers. This is Marva Sweeney-Nixon's story.
I feel it's important to advocate for people because I feel I'm somewhat privileged in my position now as a professor and as an associate vice president research. So I have a voice, and it's really important to me to use my voice to affect some change. My name is Dr. Marva Sweeney-Nixon, and I live in Prince Edward Island in a community of Stratford, and I work in Charlottetown, PEI, and I am a Black changemaker. I joined a few years ago the Canadian Black Scientists Network. They promote science to Black students and scholars. They promote the work of Black scholars. Really, there aren't very many BIPOC or Black scientists at UPEI. So you can feel, it can be lonely and you can feel alone, so it's nice to feel part of a group and a large group. So it's nice to belong, and it's really important that we have that representation. So I think for younger Black people, I think it's important to see yourself in people. It gives you some value and some confidence and maybe some inspiration. I like to maybe inspire or motivate people. It gives you a sense of something that you can achieve. The injustices that I see can be subtle. It could be things like unconscious biases, where BIPOC students might be viewed as not as capable as non-BIPOC students. That might show up in how they're treated, or expectations people have for them in terms of their academic successes. I feel as if we're maybe getting a little bit better in some regards, but I feel as if also we have a way to go when it comes to that. One of my passions is advocacy and promoting equity, diversity, and inclusion. So using my voice to do better. So what I really want to do is make the world, PEI, UPEI, that little bit better because I can use my position. It feels good to do good and to see change occur and to really make someone else's life better. It feels good to do that.
A long-running martial arts club in Richmond is celebrating a big milestone this year. Steveston Judo Club has been in the community for 70 years. Our Steve Jong stopped by to see how people practice and to chat with some members who have been there since it opened.
This year is our 70th anniversary of the Judo Club that started after the Second World War by 10 fishermen that were black belts. And the club started in September 1953.
My dad was one of the original instructors. He started teaching us as a little kid. The goal was that, for us kids, there wasn't too many things to do. So I think they got together and said, oh, let's try to, before the war, there was a big club here.
We were the outsiders sort of thing. This was about the only thing that was really unique to us, I guess. It was really hard for us to join in, anything like even baseball, soccer, and stuff like that. So that's one of the things that we were kind of looking forward to.
Now we have mats on the floor here. In those days, we had sawdust on the floor, canvas on top, and that's how we started judo. Because there was no judo gis sold at that time. Our mothers made our pants out of 100-pound rice sacks.
The instructors we had were fishermen that didn't have that much time to give because then fishing was good. That's why we're still here, I think. We found that they had to give up their time. And it's just, it's very sad. It's very trying at times, but I find that there's some very rewarding at times.
We had some senseis say to us, when you're young, you take everything you can to be a better person or a better judoka. You take. But someday you have to give back. There's 5 of us that have stayed with the club for 70 years, and we were taught that, so it's in our head.
This club, I hope it keeps going on for another 70 years, at least.
There's a live shot of Harbour Centre lit up for Pink Shirt Day, and you can see Grouse Mountain in the background. We've already had some snowfall across the south coast, much more in the rest of BC. Cold's here too. Johanna will have your BC-wide weather after this.
You ready? Rolling. When I was a newspaper reporter years ago, the standing joke was that the most important tool for those airhead TV reporters was the hairbrush. Well, of course, nothing could be farther from the truth. How's my hair? Is it okay?
Yeah, it's fine, Fred.
Anyway, you get the impression that TV reporters are more concerned with looks than anything else. Well, in broadcast news, our hero, our not-too-bright hero, a former sports reporter played by William Hurt, doesn't have to worry because he looks great.
What do you do when your real life exceeds your dreams? Keep it to yourself.
Well, much like it happens in real life, the producer, played by Holly Hunter, gets to help our blonde boy Bimbo in a breaking special report. But she makes sure he has his earpiece plugged in so she can feed him what he needs to know.
It's the Gulf of Sidra.
So,
That's great.
Commander,
That's
it must
great.
have been a bit tougher today, shooting down the MiG-21. The one you got was an Su-22.
What's it like at the moment of confrontation?
What's it like to be in a real dogfight?
Now, this could leave the impression that news anchors are dummies who have to be manipulated from behind the scenes. Our anchors wear earpieces, but for entirely different reasons.
They do get really used at things like a convention or an election, but no, our anchors do know what they're talking about. That may be true of some folks. It's not true of our guys. Same time, that part of the movie made me laugh because it does remind me of Bill Good, who has a gift of taking in information through his ear, too.
You get direction. In a convention, for example, someone may spot a delegate moving across the floor and want you to point it out, and they'll tell you that. Or they'll be saying, we have Fred Causey standing by on camera 3. Get to him as fast as you can.
Let's go back down onto the floor, and here's Brian DeBrey.
What's it like most nights? Most nights, on the news center, we have a scruffy character in the control room. This is a director by the name of Lawrence, who looks like he's trying to eat an owl, and he's telling me, we don't have that item, think of something clever to say while I find a tape.
In some ways, the most sympathetic character in broadcast news is the ace reporter played by Albert Brooks. He can write, he speaks Spanish, sings in French, but he hasn't a hope of becoming an anchor, which is his dream. When he gets his chance, he has such an attack of flop sweat, it looks like he's in the shower.
Say it here, it comes out there.
It'll take him a while. It'll take him about another hour, a good hour, to get into radio contact, but let's talk to him.
In fact, most of our reporters are more like Albert Brooks than William Hurt. They're news hounds from radio and newspapers. People like Rick Austin, our assignment editor, who's reported from the jungles of Nicaragua and the jungles of Ottawa. This scene, the deadline freakout, gets a lot of reaction from those of us who work in the real broadcast news business.
Whoops. Whoops.
With 30 seconds to go before your item goes to air, you really can be panicking to get the last shot in, day after day.
You got it! Go! 8, 4. Tonight we're going to one Rambo for hire. Was there.
In other times with other purposes, there might.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On March 29th, join Leanne Young at the Zilly Cares Conversation on Care, a mental health fundraiser with Dr. Gabor Mate and Dr. Mariam Zainadin. Get your tickets at zillycare.com. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Our BC-wide weather forecast now with meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. Been cold across parts of the province, and now we're feeling the briskness here for the south coast.
It really is fully entrenched across BC now,
Good
Dan.
usage.
Yes, no one is left out of this Arctic air mass. Just want to show you the highs that we hit today. So Vancouver didn't get much above 2 at YVR, just a 1 for West Van. -1 was your high in Abbotsford. Feeling that chill all the way across the island. That, of course, that came with snow for the east side. More on that in a moment. And the interior struggling to see temperatures above -6 and through Kelowna, where we did see some light snow, -6 out towards Castlegar. So all starting to see those 5 to 15 degree below seasonal temperatures. And that's the story temperature-wise through to the end of the week. Also getting that snow, as I mentioned, a little bit of a system south of the border, sort of supplying that moisture into our Arctic air. Those snowfall warnings in place, basically through Nanaimo, Duncan, down to Fanny Bay, likely ending tomorrow morning, but you are left, especially up towards the Malahat, with closer to 10 centimeters. Wind chills in place for inland and coastal sections of -20, where you don't often see that. Prince George, you are already under a special weather statement in advance of the snow that is coming for the whole province when this cold air lifts out on Saturday. So cold and clear the next couple of days. We get that marine air coming in on Saturday. It's going to work its way down from the north to the south coast. This is a very preliminary look. I shouldn't even be showing you this. The first snowfall totals, which will be changing, but over the weekend, parts of Metro Vancouver could be looking at a 20-centimeter snow event, so fairly significant Saturday night into Sunday morning. I would definitely be honing those snowfall totals. But you can see that marine air moving in as we head into the weekend. So cold and clear Thursday, Friday. We start to see those warmer temperatures Saturday, which brings the moisture. 5 by Sunday, and Dan, we're back to sort of below seasonal, but not quite Arctic for next week. But yeah, watching that snow. Don't tell anyone I showed you the map.
Yeah, no. That's between you and I.
Thanks.
It's a winter variety pack. Thanks, Joe. You're welcome. And just before we go, we have an update from Updrive BC. Upper Levels Highway in West Vancouver closed westbound between 15th and 22nd Street because of black ice. It is cold out there. If you are out, drive safe. Hopefully it's not too bad of a morning commute. Good night.